Evening, everyone. Tonight it is my honor to introduce this year's recipient of the Blair County Sports Hall of Fame Lifetime Achievement Award, Bob Moore. To be honest, I can't imagine a more appropriate recipient for this honor, as Bob's success truly spans a lifetime. Bob's career in sports tells an extraordinary story, not just of success, but of service, character, and lasting impact. He began his career in collegiate sports at his alma mater, St. Francis. His knowledge and skill were undeniable, and he soon found himself in professional football. While working on the USFL, he connected with Carl Peterson, who later went on to become the general manager of the Kansas City Chiefs. And in 1989, Carl knew exactly the right man to bring on board as the director of public relations. Here we are today, almost 4 decades later, and Bob continues to play an integral role in our organization. After 21 years as the director of PR, Bob became our team historian, just the second in NFL history. In his current role, Bob hasn't just preserved history, he has shaped it. From building the Chiefs Hall of Honor to preserving the archives of the American Football League to producing documentaries and chronicling the legacy of one of the NFL's most iconic franchises. Bob has become the living memory of the Kansas City Chiefs. But what makes Bob truly special isn't just what he's accomplished, it's how he goes about his work. Bob Moore set the standard for professionalism, humility, and integrity. He treated everyone with respect, from executives to interns, and he built lasting relationships along the way. On a personal note, I'm especially grateful to Bob. In the early 90s, Bob introduced me to my wife, Tavia. And now, after more than 32 years of marriage, I really cannot say thank you enough for that. Bob, you've been a tremendous asset to the Kansas City Chiefs. While you remain focused on preserving our history, I hope you know that you are an integral part of that history as well. From Blair County to the National Football League, Bob Moore represents what lifelong dedication looks like to community, to history, and to people. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce the recipient of the 2026 Lifetime Achievement Award, Bob Moore.
I'm sure you all think now that the only way to get ahead is to introduce the owner of an NFL franchise to his wife. Let's hope it was more than that. But at any rate, my thanks to the committee and my congratulations to all the honorees tonight. I would hope that many of you who know me from this community where I grew up know that I never wanted to be someone bigger than myself, but I did want to be worthy of the men and women that I admired and the people who set the course for what became my professional life. And so to that end, let me thank a few people. Chuck Newman of the Philadelphia Inquirer, Miles Tannenbaum, the first professional sports owner I worked for. Certainly Carl Peterson, as Clark said, who probably more than anyone made it possible for me to have a professional football experience and career. To Marty Schottenheimer and Dick Vermeil, the 2 finest coaches I worked with over my career. The 3 college friends, Art and Jim Hunter and Dave McGarity, who have been with me through all the highs and lows of my life. To Dr. Dennis McElnay, a member of this community who taught me a great deal about public relations. To Pro Football Hall of Fame honoree Rick Goslin, from which I learned very much about the world of professional football. And to my close friend Bob Gretz, who I've known since he covered St. Francis basketball for the Johnstown Tribune Democrat, and later we ran into each other as we worked together when he covered Chiefs football for the Kansas City Star. The committee VP, Lisa Georgiano, always promoted me in my hometown, and to my good friend Suze Egan, who did likewise. And finally, the 2 newspaper men who never forgot what a local newspaper was for, to cover local sports and local sports figures, Neil Riddell and Jim Lane. Carl Sandburg wrote, "Nothing happens unless first a dream." And while I believe that dreams and dreaming have probably caused as much harm as they've done good, I'd be less than honest if I didn't say, like any boy growing up in Altoona in the 1950s and 60s, I dreamed of sports and a sports career, but the sports heroes I admired had virtues and capabilities beyond those of an average boy like me. My desire to emulate them was very great, but I never succeeded in approaching their high standards. But what I learned was that even the average, the ordinary, can find success, and even the fearful can achieve things, and it didn't necessarily have to be on the field of play. Let's be honest. The closest I was going to get to any field of play was going to be the sideline, the press box, and if I worked hard enough and learned the business, perhaps the front office of a professional sports franchise, which is where I settled. Football in Kansas City and in Philadelphia, where I did my work, was more than a game when I was there, and I was lucky to be part of it. The great sportsman Edward Bennett Williams used to call this life contest living, living for the games and their outcomes, and then no matter what the outcome, preparing to do it all over again, except better next time. If you work in sports, as everyone up here has, you certainly find out that every year is a new one. Every season is new. And that's the way sports is in this country. It runs on a natural cycle, natural annual cycle. For some people, it fades with age, but for me, the past remains a vivid panorama, a source of revelation and anxiety. The victories are there, but so are the heartbreaking defeats. And along the way, I've been able to gather a few honors, realize some modest success, work with some of the great players and coaches of my time, many of them who I still continue to have relationships today. I had a particularly wonderful wife who was like another PR person for me, and I can't tell you how much important that was to making my career very successful, as was my daughter, who has been our life. I've had wonderful parents who grew up in this community and lived here their entire lives. Each of us on this dais tonight and in the audience has had to find their own path. Of that, I'm pretty sure. Some of those paths will be noisy and exciting, and others peaceful and quiet. No one can say which is the better. For me, the most rewarding moments have not been the most obvious. The Jaffa Mosque on a cold winter's night with my father, the slap of a basketball on the old mosque floor, the smoke from thousands of barbecue grills outside Arrowhead Stadium as the Chiefs claw their way back to respectability after years of disappointment, the jubilation of a humid night in Tampa after our first USFL championship. The arms of my daughter wrapped around me as confetti fell from the sky in Miami as the Chiefs realized their victory in Super Bowl 54. And finally, tonight, back here, where it all began. Thank you so much for this evening and for this recognition.
Beautiful job. Awesome. Beautiful job. It comes naturally.
Congratulations, Bob. Well done. You can see why he's successful at what he does. You can also see why people don't like the Kansas City Chiefs, because you win too much. People around here don't want to play Kansas City. Although congrats on all the rings and all the success you guys have had over there in KC. Next is our first inductee of the night, and we're going to ride the Tulane Green Wave on this one. And his presenter tonight is a longtime community fixture and former coach. Please welcome Tony Lepore.
Good evening. I'm here to introduce you to George Geishauser. George Geishauser was an outstanding athlete at Bishop Guilfoyle High School and a graduate of 1977. George led BG in rushing and in scoring for 2 years, his junior and senior year. George had an outstanding senior year where he was all-state running back, he was a diocesan all-star, and he was even selected to participate in the coaches' all-star game during the summer of 1977. George received offers from Division I and Division II schools. He had his heart set on going to Brigham Young University, but for some reason things fell through and Brigham Young stopped recruiting him. So George just waited to the All-Star game, hoping that there would be recruiters there to see him and see what would happen. George performed very well. He scored 2 touchdowns in the All-Star game, and he played an excellent ball game. The recruiter in the stands wanted to talk to George, so the next day he gave George a phone call in the morning and asked George if they could meet during that afternoon because he was leaving town that night. And George said yes. and they met and they were together, and the rest was history. George got offered a Division I scholarship to Tulane University, and by the way, the recruiter was Altoona's own Wayne Buddy Geis that gave George that offer. George left for Tulane. He was a 3-year letterman and 2-year starter. His junior year, he was a cornerback starter for Tulane. They had an excellent team that year, and they were accepted to play in the Liberty Bowl against Penn State University. The last year for George, he was switched position-wise to strong safety to help the defense out, which he did. He was very good at that, and he succeeded, and they were invited to the Hall of Fame Bowl where he participated against Arkansas. George's dream was to get into the NFL. He didn't get drafted, but the next best thing happened. He was signed as a free agent by the Oakland Raiders. George participated in all the Oakland Raiders exhibition games. When it came to cut time, George was released by the Raiders, and he was the last defensive back to be cut. George made a decision to hang up his cleats and go home and start a career and a family. He came back to Altoona. He got a job with a Fortune 500 company. He excelled at that like he did on the football field. George won their most prestigious award, the National Salesman of the Year. It is my great privilege and distinct honor to present to you for induction into the 2026 Blair County Sports Hall of Fame, George Geishauser.
Wow. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm extremely honored with my selection into the Blair County Hall of Fame. I'd like to start by congratulating the other inductees on their outstanding careers. I'd like to thank the Hall of Fame committee and all my friends and family that are here to support me. I'd also like to thank Coach Lepore for that wonderful introduction and all of his guidance in high school. I needed it. A special thanks to the person who nominated me and made this night possible. I'm not quite sure who that is, and I didn't want to ask any questions because I didn't want them to change their minds. I think it's important to have role models in your life. My first role models were my mother and father. They were both very hard workers, teaching me what hard work and true character was. My father was a German immigrant, and he had elite speed. He ran in a pre-Olympic qualifier for his homeland at the age of 16. I wish my mother was here. She would tell you. My dad's not the only one that we got our talent from, because she happened to be a really good catcher on the neighborhood baseball team. My other role models were my 3 older brothers. They each had unique qualities. Bern and Bob were both very smart and successful. They taught me a lot of useful things that I used my whole life. Tom, who was 10 years older, excelled in sports and was honored a few years ago with his induction into this prestigious Hall of Fame. He was a senior in high school when I was in 4th grade. Going to his games in high school and college inspired me to do the same. My goal, freshman year in high school, was crystal clear. I wanted to earn a Division I football scholarship. Well, high school was very stressful. I wanted so badly to succeed and follow in my brother's footsteps. We didn't have states or district games back then. We played 10 games, so every game was crucial. Teamwork was very important in achieving my goal. When the team succeeds, we all succeed. Our teamwork, along with great coaching, produced a great team. A lot of my teammates went on to play college football. I was blessed, and I was recruited by several colleges, and I visited 5. 2 trips were out west. Arizona State was a top 10 team at the time. and BYU was also another top 20 team. After visiting 3 more schools, I quickly signed with Brigham Young. I loved the Rocky Mountains, and they were also going to let me play running back. Well, long story short, things fell through at BYU, and they ended up pulling their offer very late. I wasn't sure what to do. All my other scholarship offers were gone. Fortunately, a priest, friend of the family, the late Father Flynn, knew Buddy Geis, who was in his first year coaching at Tulane, and he told him my situation. Lucky for me, I played in an all-star game the last week of July, and Coach Geis came up and scouted me. I had a really good game, and he signed me the next day. College was very challenging. I was 1,100 miles away from home, and Tulane was in the deep south. No cell phones, no internet, and one call home to my parents on a weekend. I wasn't recruited, so none of the coaches knew of me. And one obstacle I had to overcome was I said New Orleans instead of New Orleans. And I also had to get used to saying y'all instead of yins. I fought through injuries my first couple years, and I had to wait for my opportunity to play. My brother always told me that the time to win your position is in spring practice. Well, my opportunity came my 3rd year when our starting cornerback graduated. And I knew this was my time to seize the moment. I outplayed the guy that they had penciled in to start, and I had a great spring season. I earned the Most Improved Player award that spring, and they even called me the Cinderella Man in one article. I started the next 2 years. I can still remember the day I got moved to first team. We were in our breakout meetings, and the coach announced that there would be a position change. He said, Geishauser, your first team right cornerback. I was really excited. And one of the best calls I ever made was to my father later that day. And I told him, I said, Dad, we did it. We made first team. And I expected to see him at the LSU game, next LSU game. My professional career was short-lived and cut short by the NFL player strike in 1982. I played in the preseason games, and then the strike hit, and no games for 7 weeks. I cherished my time with the Oakland Raiders, and I got a bunch of Raider stories. One I can tell tonight's a funny one. There was a club that the Raiders would all go to during summer camp. Mark Van Egan was a fullback at the time, and he had an air hockey tournament set up. You played with a partner. My partner was Jack Squire. He played linebacker, and he made an interception in the Super Bowl the following year. We played Lyle Alzado and John Matusak. The twos is what they called them. Well, we were beating them pretty good. It was like 13-5, and the game was up to 15. All of a sudden, Alzado comes over to our side. He puts me in a bear hug, and the twos proceeds to grab the puck and knock in 10 straight goals. And they beat us 15-13. And we're like, hey, what's up with that? And so there was a bunch of crazy rules scribbled on the blackboard that we never read. And the twos says, you guys didn't read the last rule. And sure enough, we looked over, and the last rule in very small print said, no rookies were allowed to win. So in closing, I'd like to say that I had some truly memorable football experiences. I played against top talent in college. I played against Clemson the year they won one of their national championships. I played against top LSU teams in our yearly rivalry games, and we beat them twice. I played against 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of my time, John Elway and Joe Montana. I was fortunate to coach the junior high team at BG for over 10 years. I was also privileged to coach with my son-in-law, Corey Husted, this past season, and we won the league championship with my grandson, Henry. I have a great wife, Beth, and we've been together since our sophomore year in high school, nearly 52 years. and they say it couldn't be done. She was a cheerleader then, and my number one cheerleader my entire life. Beth gave me 3 awesome kids, Ryan, Katie, and Tara, all outstanding athletes and parents. Katie and Tara were both Lady Marauders and part of that legacy. Ryan had an outstanding football career at BG and went on to start 4 years for Mansfield University. Together with their spouses, Megan, Corey, and Thad, made me a proud grandfather 7 times. Ladies and gentlemen, my Hall of Fame induction is the greatest athletic award of my life, and my family is the greatest success story. I call it the home team. Thank you very much, and I'll cherish this night forever.